Hey, welcome back to the Papers Podcast. We review the health professions education literature, laugh about it, critique it, make you smarter, and we do it all with you in our community. So the usual hosts, troublemakers, and crew are all here. Welcome, Lara.
I'm going to be the host, not the troublemaker or crew.
Host. Okay, and Linda.
Hi there, everyone.
And John. Now, a bunch of us are jet lagged still. This is the third episode of the jet lag series. But John's off to work, and he's popping caffeine pills. He's drinking Red Bulls. He's got to stay up all night and work. So good on you, John. It's your turn to have a paper.
You know what the real tragedy is? I have a very, very fancy coffee maker. If you're a coffee snob like me, I have a Jura Micra. It broke today.
Oh, no.
I legitimately cried. I then put it in the front seat of my car, put the seatbelt on it so it didn't get hurt, and drove it to the service center where they say they might have to send it to Switzerland to get it fixed.
Oh, my God.
And then I broke down. Like I really had a moment. I was
Did they give you like you know how the
loaner?
car people will give you a loaner card?
Yeah,
Did
they gave me
you
some
a loaner
terrible
thing?
Starbucks Instant, which is terrible.
Oh.
I'm snorting it because I didn't need the caffeine. But anyway,
I thought you'd be
Here we
giving
go.
it intrathecally.
yeah, if I could, I would.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds nasty. Moving on.
It's not exactly what you think it means, but it's pretty painful. All right, so I have a paper for you. Let me warm you up. This article discussed the utility of ChatGPT for academic writing. The author recommends using ChatGPT to support laborious writing tasks and refining its output with one's unique voice and style for creative writing. And guess who wrote that, kids? ChatGPT. I decided, why am I using my brain and my fingers like a sucker? Let's get that Gen AI out here and do all the work I need in prepping for this podcast. In fact, I've asked our producer Samuel to see if he can deep fake me and just put me in. I mean, I got to do better than Jason. The deep fake version of me has got to do better than Jason for sure.
Actually, I need to interrupt at this point, ladies and gentlemen who are listening. We've actually been deep faking John for several weeks. He's not aware that he's a robot, driven with the ChatGPT drive. But if you wouldn't mention it to him, he's a bit sensitive about it.
My patients are quite pleased. I seem to be doing a much better job than normal.
Even though
All right,
you
you know
hallucinate?
I had to do it. Yeah, well, yes, I've been known to do that too. So you all know I had to do it. Generative AI is at the forefront of all of the things I'm thinking about in my academic world right now. I was part of a university task force on AI and education, and I got to say it's a bit of a facepalm because we forgot to ask a computer scientist to be a part of that task force.
No.
Yep. But anyway, here we go.
Dude.
I've been looking at the HP literature for a bit for any paper that allows us to jump into that conversation. You'll remember back in the late winter, we covered one of the first past the post. Is that a Canadian idiom, Lara? Is that a worldwide kind of thing?
I don't know. I'm Canadian too. I feel it works for us.
Okay. Anyway, in that paper, we talked about ChatGPT 3.0 successfully passing the USMLE. And I got to tell you, if you haven't looked at Gen AI recently, it's gotten better and better and better. It's starting to get really impressive. And we're talking based on changes month to month, week to week. But the literature hasn't really gotten much better around it. Everything seems basically a bunch of copycat manuscripts that show newer tech is better and faster at conventional educational tasks, usually looking at some kind of issue around assessment. And so I haven't seen much about how we can use Gen AI in other ways. For example, what's the role for it as a teacher or as an educator? So I'm curious to know, Jason, Linda, Lara, what's your thought about Gen AI and HPE? Is it ethical? Is the sky falling? Are you excited? Where are you landing on this? Are you as preoccupied with this phenomenon as I am?
That's easy. No, because John's pretty preoccupied with this. Because you love all new things, John. Everything new. Listen, I'm really excited about the potential for Gen AI to be a supplement, a support in practice, and to be a helpful adjunct to teaching and learning. I am not so excited about it to help with writing manuscripts, where I'm concerned that there may be some ethical issues there.
I'm less concerned. I really do think that this is a tool. And the more savvy you are with the tools, like all the other tools we have at our disposal, then these are resources we can use to make our work better and make it easier to do some tasks. It doesn't make the harder tasks any easier, and it'll certainly create other tasks that are hard. But I'm in. The only thing I need somebody to sit down and teach me how to use it. That's like literally how to find it and how to like log in and stuff. And then I'll do the prompting and all that. I have no problem with that.
There's a bit more to
We're
it.
still working on your microphone technique. We're going to get to ChatGPT next week.
Right?
And
Wait till I can figure this thing out, and then it's all.
then the
just
VCR.
easy.
So I've gone from where Jason is to where Lara is. I was concerned. I was thinking about plagiarism and how would we tell whether something was ChatGPT'd. Although I gather there now is a way of doing that, for student papers, et cetera, to hearing that, it actually makes a lot of mistakes. I love the term hallucinating, which I gather is the right term for when ChatGPT makes things up. And what it tells me is you can't let it do the work, but you can let it help you do the work.
So I've titled this episode, just kidding, I didn't title this episode at all. Guess what I did? I made ChatGPT title this episode.
That's awesome.
So ChatGPT titled this episode about itself as ChatGPT Unplugged, the academic writer's secret weapon. The actual title, which I don't think is good as what ChatGPT came up
That's
with.
better than anything you've
It's-
ever done, John. That's really good.
I'm not blind.
Seriously, that's like a good one.
Yeah, I know.
Dang.
So the actual title is Writing with ChatGPT, an illustration of its capacity, limitations, and implications for academic writers. It's published in Perspectives on Medical Education. It came out just at the start of July this year, and the author is Lundberg. Now, just a bit of a background about choosing a commentary. I never choose a commentary because it doesn't kind of match with the vibe that I think we should be going with for this podcast. We should dissect the methodology and the empiric evidence before we all jump onto our bandwagons and our high horses and argue at each other. And have some kind of evidence to at least inform our position or our opinion. And unlike a research study, the commentary is all opinion, but I'm going to make an exception today because I think this commentary provides an excellent worked example of the potential benefits of generative AI and showcases where I think academic writing is going to go in 18 months. Lundberg provides a counterpoint to those of you who think, Skynet is sentient and the sky is literally falling, or is it burning? I'm not quite sure what's going on. So this is the purpose from the author. Drawing on chats I had with ChatGPT in March and April 2023 to illustrate its capacity and its limitations, I extract a series of cautions and insights and guide writers on how to use incremental prompting to train the software, how to use it for brainstorming and generating content like outlines and summaries, and how to employ it as an editor. So essentially, we don't have a methods section, and I foreshadow that I see some head shaking. All right, Linda, you think that there's a methods section we should talk about? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there is a methods section because Lorelei describes her interactions with ChatGPT, and I'm sure you're going to tell us a little bit more about that. But then she actually draws some inferences from it. So she's basically doing a qualitative analysis of ChatGPT's responses to her prompts. So I think there is a methods section.
That reminds me of clinical studies that are N of one, right? You try something and see what happened. I think there is a bit of method to this, but that's okay.
I thought you were going to make Lara's head explode and someone's going to say autoethnography with a computer. And I'm glad we didn't do that too.
Oh, that's a good idea.
actually-
Let's say it and see what
that's a great
happens
idea.
to Lara. Boom.
Do you know
Just watch my head spin.
ChatGPT helped me predict the future? I asked it, is there a methodology to this paper? And it said no, but Jason and Linda are going to try to make an argument for this as a case study, but it disagrees that there's no case study methodology. It actually can predict the future. It's pretty shocking to me. So I don't think there is a true methodology in terms of the rigor and the insight and any type of reflection or meta thinking around here. But I do think that this is not all opinion-based. This is a worked example, and it's as such, I think it kind of performs above the typical level of a commentary of I think or I have an opinion of. You can actually see it happen. Lara, you wanted to jump in here. Do you want to go back to the autoethnography?
No, I don't want to do that. I want to ask you it's kind of a definition of terms, because I just want to make sure I really do think it's a tool, but I want to be sure I'm clear about what it is, because it's a language prediction tool, right?
Correct. Now, I'm not a computer scientist, but essentially what ChatGPT has done, it's been exposed.
But you play one on this podcast.
Yes.
Just saying.
Well, compared to you, I'm a computer scientist.
Hey, there it is.
And I'm also an education rocket surgery specialist.
That's right.
So
I signed up for that weekend course too.
if you are a computer scientist, many apologies. What ChatGPT is it's been exposed to basically the entire internet up to 2021. We should date stamp that right now. As of October 2023, Microsoft, who is financing OpenAI, is going to let it start to do searches and start to learn moving forward. It's one of a number of large language models. And what it does is, using machine learning, it finds correlations between words and tries to predict what is the next correct word that makes the best sense when a query is posed to it. So it does not possess knowledge. It does not reason. It tries to use probability to predict what is the next word that can come along. So for example, it can hallucinate by making up what it thinks is a really good solution and presenting it to you factually when there's no factual basis for that. It's not reasoning from first principles. It's simply trying to use language to say, what's the next best word that comes along? And as it has learned from trillions, and whatever the bigger word for trillions is, trillions of dialogue, it is able to predict what should come next with a high degree of alacrity, using these machine learning, non-Euclidean kind of mathematical models that tries to find correlation where there might not be a rationality to it.
I think John just threw a bunch of big words in there. After a while, I was like, sounds smart, but wait a second, those words don't go together. It was the Euclidean
moment that had me going, I feel he just
when I say
Oh.
non-Euclidean, I mean non-linear. So it's a non-linear analysis that tries to find correlation. It's not just A equals B or A equals half B. It can find ways to see relationships that you would never see in a linear kind of way.
I have no idea what
That's
Lara
what
just said, but we're going to go back on that channel.
All right. Anyway, let's get to the results, because this is a worked example. This is a commentary. So let's hear what.
Is it a commentary?
Oh, and moving on.
Okay. All right. And I'll just signal for you, if you don't know Lorelei Lundberg, she is someone who has kind of led what's called the Writer's Craft series with a bunch of other collaborators. Mm. And this is a series where they try to help scholars and academics write with parsimony, with clarity, with accuracy, with engagement. So they try to give you, over the course of the last, I think it's about 7 years now that the series has been running, regular subscriptions in PME around here's best practices in writing. And so this is not a novice writer. This is somebody who would probably be regarded as someone who writes a lot. And this is her commentary about how you can use this emerging technology to improve writing, even if you're kind of at the top of your game. So first is, you need to train ChatGPT via incremental prompts. The first thing that you put in will give you an answer that's generic and superficial. So as I was articulating, is these large language models, they don't have any ability to search information and to clarify. They're just trying to find correlations and predict what comes next. The more precise, the more narrow, the more nuanced your prompt, which you can build bit by bit by bit. You can keep saying, no, refine this or do that. You get a more accurate outcome in what you want. But for us, when we're writing from an academic or a scholarly point of view, it is entirely dependent that you have subject matter expertise. Otherwise, you'll easily be fooled by a hallucination from this model that's trying to give you an answer. And so Lundberg can articulate, there's a couple times when ChatGPT starts quoting her previous work incorrectly, and only because she's an expert in what she's actually written can she identify that as a big error. And you need to train it every time you start a new query. you can't work with ChatGPT and then come back and open a new chat box and imagine it remembers or even cares who you were, where you were. It starts back at zero. And so this is always a start from scratch process, but you can go back to saved queries and build from there. So it's not you're always going back to ground zero, but don't imagine after you've been working on something and you come to a new project, it's learned or knows who you are or the lens that you're pursuing information around. Second, ChatGPT is great to help you brainstorm. It can help create an outline for a topic or a paper you want to put. It can give you a great title. So I asked it for a title. I said, no, give me 20. And then I looked through those 20 and said, oh, I like that. It took maybe a second for it to give me 20 titles. But be cautious, because when you ask it things for which you need true outcomes that are not just general ideas, you will be fooled. So you can't say, give me 10 references that I need to think about as informing my research question, because it is not keeping current and it will only predict what the next word is. It's not actually looking for those references. It's not actually trying to adjudicate which reference is good here. I've tried this. It makes up
Right. It just
great
makes
references.
them up,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
It just
Because it does
fictional
associations,
things that it
right?
makes up.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
the authors are authors I sometimes recognize, but the titles are wrong. And when I first started playing around with this, I was fooled. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is really dangerous in the hands of someone who's not a subject matter expert. Because I was like, I didn't know that person wrote that paper. I haven't read that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, they haven't, because it doesn't exist.
There's a demo by Eric Warm from Cincinnati, live demo. He said, hey, ChatGPT, please update my CV and display it. And it was like, the first one was right, first item. Then, a Nobel Prize, something about Catholic history.
Nice.
And then it
Well
just
done.
hallucinated the rest of the document. It was awesome.
Wow.
I might keep that CV and submit it for a promotion for tenure. Nobel Prize.
There's a little bit about paleontology.
Oh,
Right.
as
So-
one does, on the weekend.
Next, ChatGPT can review your writing and generate counter arguments saying, I've argued this. What would be a counter argument to it?
That I found compelling.
ChatGPT can review your writing and generate a summary. So sometimes putting together that first draft of the abstract, which can be the most tedious, the very last step that I do, it can read your manuscript and generate that as a first draft for you. And then finally, ChatGPT can provide copy editing, improve writing. It can help you with those transitions between paragraphs and improve that. And particularly if you're publishing in English, and English is an additional language for you as an author, it can serve as a very inexpensive and very accessible resource as you make those translations from your first language into English. So, Linda, Lara, Jason, I'd love to hear from you. Of all those ways that ChatGPT can help you, something resonate with you, or are you still concerned with the ethics of this?
So I'm not concerned with the ethics, and I think the thing that resonated with me the most was generating a summary or an abstract and improving clarity. The other thing which I think was mentioned in here somewhere was the idea of training ChatGPT to actually come close to your voice. I think the functional word there is training. I got to say, I actually love this paper. As with many Lorelei papers, it's written well, it's very readable. I could give it to a non-professional audience and have them read it, would be fine. My only complaint is that they used a screen capture to capture the chats. And I needed a bloody microscope to read it. The font is so small. Other than that, I think it's a fascinating paper, and I learned a lot from it.
So I'm going to echo much of what Linda has said. I think so two things. One is, the one thing that I hope all of our listeners do is take the time to go out and find the writer's craft in Perspectives on Medical Education. That column is worth all of the time of actually sitting down and thinking about it and using the skills that are in there. It is legitimately one of the best writing resources, never mind in our own field. Like, scholars from other domains can use these lessons. They're really excellent. So first, please take the time, use the resource that's provided there. the other thing I just want to touch on in terms of the ethics, that's the only place where all of this gets for me a little bit tricky. Not because I don't think there's a den of evil people somewhere going, oh, I'm going to chat GPT for the rest of my life and never work a day and get paid for it. I don't see a reality where that's happening anytime
How about
soon.
John? Like, if he could, he would. Right, John? Isn't that true?
He's not talking to you
I know
now.
he's just
I'm
smiling
saying.
a little
He's decided
quietly
you're
to
not worth
himself.
it. Yeah. No, so the ethics of it is something that I think at some point, when it becomes more than language prediction, maybe at that point we have to do some thinking about the ethics. But the work of being creative, of having creative ideas, of doing rigorous research, all of that's the bread and butter of the scholarship of the work that we do. ChatGPT is not going to do that. If it helps you write it better, honestly, if it's a field leveler for those individuals who don't have English as their native language, as their first language, I'm really okay with it. Like, then actually it is incredibly ethical then, because it's taking out that it's a leveler. And so for that, I like it.
Okay, I'll just pile on very briefly. I love everything that Lorelei Linga writes. She has a magical way with words, and this just flows nicely and it keeps you moving through it. This is a very basic introduction to the properties of ChatGPT. So if you have never seen a presentation or haven't read anything else about it, this is a great start. It gives you just some principles to as guidance as to the current state of it. But there's a lot more to the potential for ChatGPT beyond this article. For example, at one point in the article, Lorelei sort of says, like, you can't put any more input into this, it gives you an error. Well, there are ways around that. There are ways of programming and folding your questions. So there's a lot more beyond this. But this is a great intro. And it'll help some people sort of get their heads around it. The thing that was most interesting to me, apropos to John's question, is thinking about through counter arguments. It's like having a little thinking partner. It's kind of cool.
The last little point that I think comes from this article is you need to be cautious about what are the journal criteria and guidelines around the use of Gen AI, and you should be thoughtful in terms of doing that. I will tell you that I have recently produced a book chapter for the good Dr. Varpio, and I used ChatGPT4 and had it acknowledged, and you guys scratch your head. It's like, well, we didn't see that one coming, but I'll let you sort out how you want to do that. There was no guidelines when you asked me to write that.
There's no guidelines for this. I don't know what we're doing either.
I want to get the big meta narrative, which is embedded and imbued throughout the whole commentary, which is ChatGPT is a tool in the same way that SPSS is a tool and Google Scholar is a tool and Zotero is a tool, but it's not an author. And that's where the ethical stuff breaks down. And so if you imagine, oh, I don't have to do anything more, I'm just going to throw some data into ChatGPT and say, make me a paper or write me an introduction. It's a tool to help you be better at you coming up with your own argument, own ideas, own insights, and own analysis. And then as a tool, making you more efficient, but it's not an author. And that's really where, at the end of the day, the adjudication about the ethical thing breaks down for me. I think we're going to have more challenges for people who are coming up and don't see the nuance of that argument. And so I think we need to be being front and center about how these generative AI tools are being incorporated, and a fundamental disclosure about where and in what process of the scholarly production were they incorporated.
I just to add to that, I think it's interesting that it was mentioned in here. There are journals that won't allow ChatGPT to be an author because it cannot take responsibility for what it's writing.
Okay, let me quote from the author herself in terms of conclusion, and I'll move us to our rounds of votes. Distinguish the laborious from the creative writing tasks. Use ChatGPT to support the former and keep the latter for yourself. And always view what is generated as a first draft, which you will refine and rework, infusing it with your own particular emphasis, your unique voice, and style. In terms of a round of votes for methods, I'm going to say NA despite the pleas of Linda and Jason.
Agreed.
And let's go to our educational impact. How many howls on a scale of 1 to 5 are you going to give it? You don't get the reference, do you? Lara, I thought you were a big enough nerd to get the sci-fi reference there. No?
I have no idea what we're howling about.
Howl, not howling.
Oh, howl. Oh,
Howling?
well, I understand the reference now. I'm just deaf.
Okay.
Jason's making smart comments, but he's on mute, so we've missed them all.
All right. Jason, Linda, Lara, educational impact.
I was saying it was John's accent. I agree with you, Larry. I couldn't tell
maybe.
it was howls or howls. I think this gets 3 howls. It's a really good intro to some of the most basic principles of interacting with Gen AI. Gives you some suggestions on how to use it to supplement as a tool.
I'm going to give the methods of 4. No, I'm going to give the methods of 3, but you didn't ask me that. But I'm going to give it a 4 for the paper. A, because I can show it to people and say, if your writing looks like this is the way it should look. It just flows so nicely. Second, it's not just an opinion piece. It's an opinion piece with enough examples that it makes a wonderful story.
For all those reasons, I'm giving it a 5. I couldn't have asked for more out of a paper like this that's got these purposes in mind. It's a 5.
As a commentary, I'm going to give it a 5. In my sense, few people read a commentary. They might be cued for an idea, and that idea will lead to some further work. But commentaries are rarely referenced. I think this might be referenced a number of times, but I think it has a very short half-life, and it's not a function of the writing, but it's a function of where this space is going.
Yeah.
In 18 months from now, all of us will be doing all of this, and none of us will need to be reminded or bootstrapped up to efficiency. This will be the norm, and we'll
really. You think in 18 months we're all going to be ChatGPTing?
Oh, I thought I was being generous. I think it might actually be shorter than that. Yes.
God, I gotta look this thing up.
And so I think it's also a generational piece. Lara, you have your process for writing. I think new generation of scholars are going to see this as a very helpful and functional tool, particularly when they're writing at large volumes in grad school. So I think no one's going to need this to get bootstrapped and get up to speed, because it will be inculcated in everything we're doing. So that's my take. Let's timestamp this, and we'll come back next year at the same time and see where we're at. Yeah? No? Okay.
Sounds good.
With that,
I'm in, but somebody needs to babysit me on this. Like, somebody needs to actually come and help me figure this out. John, if you were in the same city as me, I'd be like so at your door
Isn't
tomorrow.
Your husband
going,
an engineer or something?
He's a literal rocket scientist.
He writes all the code. No, he writes the code. When you bring him to like a completed something, any like user interface, he's got no skill, none. He's looking for zeros and ones. I'm like, dude, you're not helping.
He's got to be helpful.
But that's why I have friends like you, right? Like, this is why I have my other brothers and sisters. I'm just saying.
Linda, Jason, do you ever wonder what kind of nerd talk, what kind of nerd talk happens at the Varpio dinner table? Ones and zeros and ethnographic analyses and philosophy.
I could just see, the kids are between the zeros, ones, and the ethnographic on the other end of the table. Poor kids.
I feel we should rescue them and take them to a baseball game or something.
We actually think, I take him to all the sports stuff. It's super fun. But I actually think my youngest is more prof than we are. He'll just start a topic and just go, right? So the rest of us are waiting for him to breathe.
Does he wear tweed with elbow patches already?
Nobody has a really nice, like, very sophisticated little house coat. He came in and gave me a hug. I don't know if you guys
That's
remember.
awesome.
But anyway, we got to sign off.
Dear listener, thank you for staying with us to the bitter end. If you're still here, I feel we're just talking to empty space. But if you are still here, we'd love to hear from you. You can find the abstracts for all of our episodes at thepaperspodcast.com, paperspodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to communicate with us, you can reach us at Gmail. So thepaperspodcast@gmail.com. And if you're subscribing, we'd love for you to give us a thumbs up or a 5-star rating. And if you really, really like us, tell a friend. We're doing a lot of this to help advance and grow a community, and we just want to be able to, have that conversation with a growing audience. So thanks for listening.
Take care, everybody.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Papers Podcast. We hope we made you just slightly smarter. The podcast is a production of the Unit for Teaching and Learning at the Karolinska Institutet. The executive producer today was my friend Teresa Sörö. The technical producer today was Samuel Lundberg. You can learn more about the Papers Podcast and contact us at www.thepaperspodcast.com. Thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you for all you do. Take care.